Good morning. Welcome to the first meeting of the 2024 Interim Joint Committee meetings. We're going to, I tell you what, we'll go ahead and call the roll so I don't forget to do that. And then we're going to take a moment to remember D-Day and we'll start off with that. So let's call the roll at this time.
Senator Chambers Armstrong, Senator Boswell, Senator Carpenter, Senator Deneen, Senator Givens, Senator Thayer, Senator Webb, Senator West, Senator Westerfield, Senator Wilson, here. Representative All,
Here.
Representative Callaway, Representative Kleins,
Here.
Representative Dixon, Representative Pfister,
Here.
Representative Graham,
Here.
Representative Hale,
Here.
Representative Hart,
Here.
Representative King,
Present.
Representative Cook, Representative McPherson,
Here.
Representative Neighbors,
Here.
Representative Pollock,
Here.
Representative Pratt, Representative Rayburn,
Here.
Representative Stalker,
Present.
Representative Stevenson, Representative Tate, Representative Thomas,
Present.
Representative Tipton, Chair Howell, and Chair Heath.
Present. Does any members have a guest they'd like to introduce before we get started? So we're going to take a moment of silence, and after that, if any of you have a personal story that you want to share, we've got time for that this morning. So why don't you stand with me and bow your heads. Thank you. Senator Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to share there are 105 Kentuckians buried at the Normandy American Cemetery, and on the plaque there are 14 Kentuckians' names listed as missing in that battle. So just in remembering D-Day, just definitely want to remember that Kentucky paid a heavy price there. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Walker.
Yeah, this wasn't D-Day, but it was World War II. My father fought in World War II in the Pacific Fleet. He was Navy, and he always considered himself so blessed because on a Navy battleship, they'd have multiple stations, and he was down in the galley cooking. And when the sirens went off and everything, he was about 45 seconds late to his gunnery battle area when a kamikaze had hit it and killed everyone there. And just thinking that, what a life change it would have been for 45 seconds or a minute or two later or earlier or something like that. So he's passed since, but kind of a neat story. It took him a long time to tell us that. So,
Representative Pollock.
Yes, I just day like today want to obviously remember my grandfather, Sergeant Edward Lynch. As you all know in this room, my nickname is Sarge, and he earned that title and obviously handed it down to me. I thoroughly recognize in his service those who obviously paid their lives to provide the freedoms that we all have today. But just again, to carry his legacy on as a nickname that he earned is very, I guess, humbling to me. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. I had an uncle who died in a plane crash in World War II. Never met him, but my aunt, his widow, lived a long life without him. So, reminder of the sacrifices. So with that being said, we'll get into our meeting and we'll call our Kentucky Agriculture Council up to the table. And if you guys will push the button and make sure the green light comes on your mic, and then introduce yourself for the record, and then the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Green light. I should know how to do that by now.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Todd Griffin, President of the Kentucky Retail Federation and Executive Director of the Agribusiness Association of Kentucky.
Good morning. I'm Michelle Payne with Cause Matters Corporation, working with the Kentucky Agricultural Council on the strategic roadmap. Thank you for having us.
I'm Jennifer Elwell. I'm Executive Secretary of the Kentucky Agricultural Council and Executive Director of the Kentucky Agriculture and Environment in the Classroom.
Thank you. Feel free to begin.
Well, good morning, Chairman Heath and esteemed Interim Joint Committee members on agriculture. Your role in shaping the future of Kentucky's agriculture is of the utmost importance, and we appreciate the opportunity to discuss the strategic roadmap for Kentucky agriculture 2025 to 2030. Again, I'm Jennifer Elwell. I've had this role with the Kentucky Ag Environment in the Classroom for the past 10 years. We appreciate Todd Griffin, who is with us today, his role. He has been helping with agricultural matters for more than 30 years, and then we are surely appreciative of Michelle Payne's expertise as she has worked on an international level, trying to bring people together to discuss food and farm and how they are coming together. So the Kentucky Agricultural Council is an umbrella organization of more than 50 agricultural associations, cooperatives, and foundations, including the Kentucky Department of Agriculture, Kentucky Farm Bureau, our publicly funded schools of agriculture, the Cooperative Extension Service, conservation districts, and more. Agricultural organization leaders have been meeting to address their shared issues since the late 1970s at the prompting of Kentucky Farm Bureau's E.W. Kessler. The Kentucky Ag Council was then officially formed in 1998 by Jeff Hall. He was with Project Ag 2000, David Beck, Steve Coleman, among many others. The mission of the Kentucky Ag Council has been to create an understanding and appreciation for agriculture by bringing agricultural stakeholders together through educational programming and networking sessions. And the council has also served as a liaison between private and public agricultural organizations, the Commissioner of Agriculture, the governor, and the legislature to develop and effectively utilize our agricultural resources. Here you can see our current leadership and our chair, Dr. Tony Brannon, formerly the dean of Murray State University's Hudson School of Agriculture. He expresses his regrets for not being able to attend today's session, but he really wanted to thank you for allowing us to address you today. Oops. We also want to thank Warren Beeler, who's in the audience. Dr. Will Schnell with UK, he has been instrumental in this effort as well, and we just thank them for their input. But thanks to his involvement in the Kentucky Ag Council and at the start of his career, I'd like to call on Todd Griffin to give us a brief history of how the organization became involved in strategic planning for agriculture.
Thank you, Jennifer. So besides the networking and coordination role the KAC provides, one of its biggest contributions to agriculture has been its leadership in developing 2 agricultural strategic plans for the Commonwealth. These plans are organized around very broad themes and overarching strategies that can help advance all of Kentucky's agricultural producers, processors, agribusinesses, and our rural communities. So prior to the federal tobacco buyout back in October of 2004, Kentucky agriculture really hadn't had a unifying focus or strategy to guide its future growth and development. Although various organizations and ag sectors had established plans, like Ag Project 2000, for example, for their respective interests, but no plan existed for the industry as a whole. So in 2007, the Kentucky Ag Council set out to formulate a strategic plan for Kentucky agriculture that resulted in a publication called A Pathway for Kentucky's Agriculture and Its Rural Communities, a strategic plan for 2007 to 2012. This plan focused on Kentucky's Kentucky agriculture's growth and development strategies in the post-tobacco buyout era. The first plan was the work of several hundred agricultural leaders and volunteer members who participated in 6 public forums across the state throughout the year. The plan contained 6 core strategies and over 90 specific goals and actions. And specifically as related to the General Assembly, there were 10 priority policy and legislative actions that were put forth to advance Kentucky agriculture. But the one overarching goal of the plan was to sustain and enhance the investment in Kentucky agriculture through the Kentucky Ag Development Fund to maintain that 50% of the Master Settlement Agreement. A big focus of the plan overall, too, was increasing the net income of farm households across Kentucky and strengthening the quality of life in our rural communities. So those were two of the overarching goals as well. I think it's important to note that the plan was intended from the start to be a living document, not something that was done and then put on a shelf. And so in that regard, KAC set up implementation committees, and we started having more regular meetings to get together and report on the plan's progress, and that continues to this day. The second plan was named Connecting Strategies to Better Kentucky's Agricultural Economy in Rural Communities 2013 to 2018. It continued to focus on improving net farm income and strengthening rural communities. The plan was focused on 7 topic areas that would benefit Kentucky Ag and included 5 policy actions for the legislature to advance the industry. Again, over the course of the 2012 year, members conducted 7 public forums across the state to identify issues facing agriculture. And from this step, various subcommittees worked on a series of goals and actions that were developed for the plan. And so this formed the building blocks around which the final plan was completed. The importance of creating and implementing these plans cannot be understated, I don't think. They have served a vital purpose in bringing Kentucky agriculture together and focusing on the big picture ideas and projects that really move the needle forward for growth and development. They've also served to bring agriculture interests together to communicate and advocate to this committee and the General Assembly at large the key policy changes needed to make sure Kentucky agriculture and rural communities remain vibrant and relevant to our citizens across the Commonwealth. I want to mention just a few results from the efforts of those who worked on the past plans, and I want to certainly thank this committee for your support of those projects that are tied to state policy positions, decisions, and state budget dollars specifically. So in no particular order, here are just a few. Obviously, protect the Master Settlement Agreement dollars. Increase farmers markets and emphasis on the Kentucky Proud program. Expand producer education opportunities in value added and marketing. Upgrades to veterinary diagnostic centers across the state. Focus on recruiting large animal vets to work in the state. Expand investments in infrastructure for 4-H and FFA leadership training camps. Funding for university research farms. Funding for rural water and sewer infrastructure. Research new crop opportunities. Development of urban ag projects. Development of new technologies in agriculture. Expand middle school and high school FFA chapters and implement ag literacy and curriculum in Kentucky schools. Promote regional agriculture initiatives such as the West Kentucky WAVE Ag program. Improve access to health care in rural areas through telemedicine. And promote careers in agriculture and develop the next generation of farmers. Those are just a few of the results that have come out of the plans. And as with any strategic planning process, there are areas in these plans that remain undone or still a work in progress. And, now that we're in the post-pandemic era, if that's what you want to call it, Mr. Chairman, the KAC decided it's time for another strategic plan to bring agriculture back together and work on the needs for the industry for the next 5 years. So once again, as we've done with previous plans, the Ag Council brought in professional assistance for plan development. So at this time, I'd like to turn the mic over to Michelle Payne.
Thank you, and thank you again for having us today. I also want to compliment you because I do work on a national scene, and I have been familiar with Kentucky agriculture since the National FFA Convention first relocated here. And watching what you all have done with the tobacco settlement dollars has been impressive by far you lead the nation in your diversification efforts. So kudos on that. And it's been my distinct privilege to be able to work with a great deal of leaders across Kentucky agriculture, including many of the folks behind us here today, the board members at KAC, and of course Jennifer and Todd. So appreciate your opportunity to learn more about the strategic plan today. We started this back in December, and thankfully technology has allowed us to work with a large number of people throughout this process. So through Zoom, we had 3 different focus groups. You can see that we included agribusinesses. We had a number of farmer voices at the table. We had elected officials, and we had a variety of sizes and stripes of Kentucky agriculture, as well as bringing in food people. That was incredibly important to some of us to be able to drive connections around the food plate between farm and food. And then if you want to go ahead and advance, what we did is we found that those groups, through asking the same sets of questions, is that we were able to have a robust discussion. So we started off with the active leaders within KAC, as you can see. Then we moved to membership and the people that were suggested by the first focus groups, as well as the interested alumni from the Kentucky Agriculture Leadership Program. And then we moved, of course, to the new KDA staff. Warren certainly has helped us out, as has the commissioner, and the groups that have historically not been involved with KAC. We wanted to emphasize bringing in some of the smaller agriculture organizations and, again, the food organizations. So you can see that we've had all of the commodities. We've had horticulture, woodland, veterinarians, young farmers, older farmers, not that we would ever say that about any of our farmers, and a diverse audience, which really brought together some good discussions. So the questions that we asked were very simple. It's basically what's missing, looking ahead 10 years, and I will tell you I was very impressed with the answers that I consistently heard from the leaders that engaged in these discussions. And we spent a lot of time talking about the gap of understanding. If you're from the farm side of the plate, there's probably just a little frustration that people don't understand the 1.5% of our population in the U.S. that farms. And so we spent a lot of time talking about the gap of understanding and who specifically needs to learn. There were some pretty innovative ideas that came out of that. And then I also challenged the participants to think about who they needed to work with today. And I will tell you that one of the common answers was their elected officials and many of the people sitting in this room. So they appreciate your work and they want to work with you closer. And then in the interest of the Agriculture Summit, that is on November 14th and 15th in Louisville, we wanted to understand specifically what would make that summit valuable. Clearly, none of us need another meeting, so our goal is to deliver value on those 2 days. And so as a result of that is what we found were 9 common themes. So we took the input from those 120 plus people, and we found 9 common themes. That was done through a variety of ways, including using AI. I actually plugged in all of the results to ChatGPT and confirmed my thoughts that ChatGPT does not understand agriculture. But we were able to identify 9 common themes that really represented what we heard in the discussions. And the first one, and by far the greatest concern, was being able to sustain Kentucky farmland and making sure that there is help for both young farmers and transitions. There's a significant concern nationwide about the farmland lost. I know in my own home county of Boone County, Indiana, there's actually 10,000 prime farmland acres that will be developed in the next 5 years. This is something that's very personal to those of us that produce food. And one of the things that we consistently heard from all ages of farmers is that it's nearly impossible for a young farmer to get started today. We need to do better. We need to do more. And this isn't just in Kentucky. This is a nation-wide program. But I will also tell you that I saw a lot of concern and discussion around perhaps it's time for Kentucky agriculture to be more accepting of farmers and those in agriculture that look different than the traditional farmers. And then there is also a lot of concern, as there should be, is what's going to happen to our beautiful farmland with all these people moving in. And so it's an interesting challenge that we found throughout most of the 9 themes is that there is a breadth of resources available, but people are overwhelmed trying to find them. And that is one of the roles that KAC can play, is to hopefully coordinate those and whatnot. And then the next theme was really around something that we know is near and dear to the new commissioner's heart, and that is engaging agriculture and economic development discussions. Many people do not understand that economic development from the farm isn't just about jobs. It's about the wages that they pay their employees, who then take it into the community, and then also the taxes and the many different ways that farmers and agribusinesses support those communities. So there was a lot of interest at the local level, as well as obviously helping stimulate Kentucky's economy through further development in economic areas. So one of the things that I heard commonly, particularly from those who are farmers, is that they really wish that we could change the sentiment from our fields are not undeveloped land. Those are vibrant, growing fields, and change the sentiment to see agriculture's significant role in the economy. And then the third area was one that was really interesting. There is a significant lack. If you've ever managed square bales on that wagon, as I have, you'll fully understand the significant lack of people willing to do that anymore. And also, it's interesting to note alongside of that, we have significant technology in agriculture. Unbelievable technology, and it was clear there are not young people to fill either of those roles. And so it wasn't just about helping more young people in Kentucky understand agriculture, but actually be aware of the diversity of opportunities. And that was true at all levels. And it was also true that people really need a skilled workforce. And skilled can be many different areas. It can be the ability to drive an auto-steer tractor, and it can be the ability to manage those square bales. It can be the ability to be able to work with robots on some of the new dairy farms that are coming in. And it can be the ability to work in scientific labs with genetically modified organisms. So really prioritizing workforce development that meets the farm and food needs specifically was a significant concern as well. And then the next theme was really about supply chain coordination. It's not a news flash to anybody in the agribusiness and agri-food systems nationwide that we had a slight hiccup during COVID. It was clear that there were some needs in Kentucky, and you all have done some interesting things to address that, but there is a continued need for more processors. For example, dairy, large beef, and some of the things in the middle of the value chain people felt were missing. In particular, from the horticulture side, there's a lot of need for product aggregation. So perishable products obviously are a challenge to be able to manage. So aggregating those, coordinating the distribution, and then working with wholesalers would certainly add to the bottom line of your producers. And so the goal really was making sure that you take what you've done well in tourism and bourbon and horses and implement that across the entire agri-food system. And then next up was the diversification and innovation. It was really intriguing to me to hear how many people are very proud of the diversification and innovation in Kentucky agriculture. Your farmers consider themselves to be the leaders in conservation in this nation. They do have a great interest in being able to manage that diversification into the future and believe that's what's going to allow your state to stand out. But they need more relationships with processors so that there's an understanding both way, and also a way to leverage the conservation practices and the new carbon markets and the value chain sustainability requirements that are coming globally. So there are some challenges around that, but a lot of hope for the future and diversification and innovation. And then the next one is value-added markets and being able to build awareness of the certifications that already exist and really helping people understand what is local, and also helping on a national scene, bringing Kentucky agriculture more to the limelight so that they can become more of a mover of the market. And so that brings in some of the new products such as the jet fuel and biodiesel that I know KDA is working on, and some of the different ways to grow farmers markets and urban agriculture and some of the unique different producers in the state. And then the next one is one that has been very interesting to work in. We've brought in some dietitians into the mix, as well as people that have worked across the health system. And the reason why is because it came out of the focus groups that we really want to be able to work better with health professionals around how Kentucky food is grown in healthful ways. And that can be true in commodity agriculture, it can be true on organic farms, and it can be true on vertical farms. And so the goal is, and it's been very interesting actually watching some of the relationships between the food folks and the agriculture commodity organizations and the interest in being able to address food insecurity and so forth. We all know that people want to know where their food is coming from, and the goal is, as part of the strategic roadmap, is to be able to deliver on that. And then finally, one that is close to the three of us that are all sitting at the table is the agriculture literacy strategy, is what we call it, and basically helping young people understand where their food comes from, starting at the K through 5 and leveraging some of the programs that Jennifer has done, Farm Bureau has done, and others have done around agricultural literacy, so that they can understand not only where their food comes from, but to build awareness of some of those jobs that we talked about. That also involves building relationships with some of you in this room, as well as others in the State House, around economic development and the things that we have talked about. And then it also includes, and actually David Beck had suggested that, if you can go back, David Beck had suggested that, I know David from my days with National FFA, he's a great guy, and he had suggested, as a result of his new position, that he had really found that a lot of people in business didn't understand agriculture's role. And so we are building that into some of the agricultural literacy efforts, and actually already delivering on that to build familiarity in Louisville, Lexington, Frankfort, and other urban areas around what food production actually does involve. And then the next one is to be able to grow the collaboration and coordination and communications. It was very clear, particularly from the producers, that there was a lack of communications from the different organizations. And that's not to insult anyone in the room. That is simply to say that we can do better and do more, particularly post-COVID. People need to be able to know what all the other agriculture organizations are doing, and making sure that we're not recreating the wheel. So as an example, one of the things that we are doing through the strategic roadmap, specifically as an outcome of this, is to be able to work alongside some of the efforts that are being done at KDA with Kentucky Farm Bureau and some of the other organizations. None of us have enough time in the day, and we want to be able to be sure that the wheel is not being recreated, and that we can develop alongside, in tandem and parallel with organizations' efforts that are already happening. So those are the 9 themes that turned into the strategy. So over the last couple of months, we've had 19 different working group meetings, all on Zoom, to refine and prioritize the actionable tactics that we'll talk about more in detail, and then I welcome your questions afterwards. We've also had 2 in-person interactive meetings, including one yesterday, which Representative Heath was gracious enough to come and attend, and then we had one in February. We'll have another one in August, and then the summit in November. So we will make sure that we continue to work alongside Warren, as well as the commissioner and others at KDA. But our goal is to ensure that this is a living, breathing document. It's not something that's designed to sit on a shelf. It is designed to be actionable, and it may change significantly between now and November. But when you look across who was involved, it's a substantial group. This is just a list of some of the different people. We've had incredible discussions between Extension and Kentucky Woodlands, as an example. We've had some of the food banks and folks that work directly with food insecurity talk with the folks from Kentucky Pork, as another example. So we've been very pleased. It has taken a significant amount of work of the KAC board to get the right people engaged. And at this point, we will go through the different strategies specifically, and then you can ask what questions you have. And I would refer you to your handout that you should have that has some more of the details on it around this. So these are the actual 9 tactics. You'll recognize these from the themes. These were what were derived specifically from the participants in the focus groups. and it's what we just talked about. So the first one is to be able to help protect farm transitions and sustain Kentucky farmlands. So specifically, the working group has come up with some ideas around producer training and being able to create a statewide training plan. That includes some training for the older generations and accepting that transitioning farmland does not mean that you're giving up control. And it also includes some training for the newer farmers to be able to understand what their opportunities and their funding availability is as well. And then the second tactic that is a part of that is communications and marketing. As you can expect, there's a fairly significant need to be able to help people understand the transition information that's out there, because there is a lot of it. And then thirdly, it has to do more with policy changes and being able to pursue changes in both state and federal policy around tax planning, life insurance planning, new and beginning farmers, focused on long-term opportunities. And so there's some specifics alluded to around that I would welcome you to refer to. And then finally, mentoring. We've had some really interesting discussions with some established farmers of what they have done around mentoring and internships, which is the fifth tactic. And that's being able to help the next generation of farmers learn from the existing generation of farmers. It's been a missing element, and it is a huge challenge, because what farmer really has time to be spending time mentoring and training interns? So we're trying to formally put some pieces in place around that. So that is transitioning farmlands and helping the next generation. And then the next one is to engage agriculture in Kentucky's economic development discussions. Warren actually just led the discussion around this yesterday. There was a lot of talk about what we would like to consider as the economic development qualifier. We're working closely with some of the economists at UK and others in academia that are experts in this area to hopefully be able to establish a qualifier that will truly represent what agriculture brings to the table. And so that is a challenge, but we're going to continue working on that, and then also looking at some of the new markets and what some of those new higher paid jobs, those high tech jobs, if you will, might bring to the table. And so we want to be sure that this includes the that it includes the entire agri-food system, such as elevators and local agribusiness as well, that you may be familiar with in your economy. Secondly, and I know that KDA is working closely on this one, is the regional economic development networking and being able to coordinate regional meetings to showcase agriculture as economic development, to engage some of the different players that perhaps agriculture's not been involved with before, such as ADD districts, development consultants, the local economic development leaders, and bringing those alongside of the farmers. It was interesting to note that some of the producers that we had engaged in our calls actually did sit on their local chambers and their local economic development boards, and they found that to be a very fruitful activity. So we're hoping to perhaps have more of agriculture engaged in that realm as well. And then the third tactic around the economic development discussions is really about project coordination. We've had engagement with the Cabinet for Economic Development and talking with some of them to bring in the voices from some of the other working groups, do some things like develop a pitch book, and so forth. And then the fourth and fifth ones are really about university relationships. If you're not familiar, Murray State does actually have an agriculture economic development master's program. And so what the goal is to be able to develop more familiarity with agriculture as a part of economic development, and then again, work with chamber. Okay. The next one then gets into workforce development and providing an adequate employee base, as well as broadening young people's understanding. It was very interesting. This one has evolved quite a bit from our first discussion. This is the only working group that met 3 different times at their request. And so what ended up being their highest priority was to identify and meet some of the high need sectors. There is significant need or significant shortage of accountants and tax preparers that are familiar with agriculture. I see heads nodding there. There's also a need for those with meat processing capabilities, as well as large equipment operators and mechanics. If you've tried to work on a tractor recently, you know that that perhaps is not the easiest thing and usually requires a knowledge of computers, as well as economic development experts and even CDLs. One of the things that the group wants to do is to work with the plan that's been done around the Large Animal Veterinarian Initiative and to utilize some of that work and actions as a model. And then secondly is to really help people with their career mapping. We've had a number in academia engaged in this particular one. And I know as a parent of a college student that students are expected to identify the career by the time they're 12 years old. If I were to offer my opinion, that's ridiculous. But I didn't say that. But the goal really is to be able to help students understand that there is a career available in agriculture, to build that familiarity at the elementary level, and then also to help them understand that this is a lifelong learning project, that you have numerous opportunities within agriculture, and there is a great deal of interest in adult learning and rehabilitating, re-entering workforce Kentuckians. So being able to consider retraining, such as the distilling certificate that is available, and looking at some of those opportunities as well. So the challenge here is to make sure that people really understand that not only is agriculture a bright, brilliant career, but you can pursue that for your entire life. And then finally, the third one is the career influencer outreach. Because agriculture is not available in every school in Kentucky, there is significant need to help counselors and career coaches at the high school and middle school level to understand what the opportunities are across agri-food. And so we actually are interested in working with some of the organizations and doing some training and connecting with those organizations to reach those influencers. And then the next one is being able to work alongside ag in the classroom and to prioritize career exposure, not just awareness, but exposure and connections with teachers and students outside of agriculture. And so working alongside FFA, working with some of the different lesson plans, and being able to work with all the commodity groups that are around the state and their existing efforts. This is a long one. So the fifth tactic that they came up with was employer education. And one of the challenges is to ensure that there are to ensure awareness of the different careers that are available at the community and regional level. All of Kentucky agriculture is not the same from east to west. It varies dramatically, as do the workforce needs. And so working alongside the Kentucky Chamber, Lori Mays has actually done an incredible job with some of these and being able to fill in the gaps that are existing between employers and students, as well as helping farmers understand what it takes to be a good employer as well. And then the last two center around technical education. We've actually had Dr. Quarles pretty significantly engaged in some of these activities and looking at what can be done through the certification and the non-college bound or the non-4-year traditional. And so that also gets into tactic number 7, which is the post-secondary training. And I would suspect that we're going to see some significant changes from the educational level. Okay, next one is diversification and innovation. And that is in a different order, so let me get to the right notes here. Nothing like having 9 strategies to sort through. Okay. The first one is looking at ag tech. So Dr. Brannon actually led this effort. He is deeply passionate. If you know Tony, you know how much he cares about diversification in agriculture and innovation. And so the first one is being able to coordinate ag tech connections and being able to build some networks across the state. And then the second one actually looks at those specific diversification models, how to make enterprises work on the same farm work together, and gets into some of the farmer network and funding, basically about connecting the dots and removing barriers of entry. And then finally, being able to promote farming diversification and innovation amongst funders. It was noted that farmers need assistance from development or county funds for transitioning equipment, and that there are some different unique challenges around around equipment when you are diversified. And then the third one is really about the innovation vision and being able to create a shared vision across the state of what technology innovation actually is, and encouraging people to adapt new technology across all sectors of agriculture, such as drones, and looking for additional opportunities. Number 4 is elevating biorenewables, working with the existing efforts and building an understanding of the needs and logistics around that. And then the 5th one gets into the distilleries. There is a significant interest, particularly from producers that have already engaged with the distilleries, to identify ways to leverage local distilleries to have Kentucky corn, barley, rye, wood, and other crops put into products. There's a significant amount of research that's required for those products to work in the distillery situation, if you're not aware, but we've had some good discussions around that. Okay. So now we are going to the supply chain one. Let me go back to that. So basically the supply chain coordination is focused on, and we had Ashton Potter Wright significantly engaged out of this, if you're familiar with her work at UK and some of the different things that she's done in Lexington, to really look at the opportunities to change the incentive structure at the state level to purchase Kentucky-grown farm products for schools, state parks, hospitals, universities, and understanding some of the common metrics around that and seeking legislative change to contractually obligate, monitor, and track Kentucky-grown purchases. I suspect you'll continue to hear more about this one. And then another one is local foods in schools, being able to prioritize and seek food system investments to leverage local school-farm relationships. We've had the good fortune of having some of the different growers involved that actually have done this at a local level. Hearing the stories has been amazing. And the goal is to be able to identify ways to make schools be the largest produce buyer in Kentucky. That would solve a lot of interesting problems. And then number 3 is distributor expansion, and encourage and discover incentive structure for distributors to expand purchasing from more Kentucky farmers, looking at sub-hubs, being able to do some of the aggregation that we had talked about, and then also looking at the farm-to-school relationship building, working alongside KDA to administer their $3.2 million USDA farm-to-school grant by a year from April, and being able to go into more schools is one of the tactics. And then finally taking a look at meat processing and seeing really what's needed around beef and meat processing, making sure those are specifically targeted. And then going into some of the best practices research. There's a lot of interest, and I have to compliment the folks from the Commonwealth here. They really want to learn from other states. One of the things that we're looking at as an example is bringing in somebody from Michigan to talk about what they've done with the diversification program. And another one that has to do with this particular tactic is looking at West Virginia's buy local model. You'll find in other tactics from other strategic groups is to work alongside Tennessee. There's no need to recreate the wheel, right? So let's learn from those that do well, and that was tactic number 6. And then tactic number 7 is grain processing and training to grow small grain processing and storage by helping farmers understand the quality concerns, processing needs, storage options, and innovative practices. So that gets back to some of the unique needs around specific grains. So that brings us up to partnerships in the food and health space. This is one that I have a personal passion for. One of my jobs is a professional speaker, and I speak on mental health and agriculture. If you are not aware, agriculture nationwide across North America has a problem around mental health. We are one of the highest suicide sectors that there is. I've had friends personally die by suicide. And I will tell you that it leaves a mark on you for life. We need to do better and we need to do more. And much to my surprise, the number one tactic that this working group came up with is around farmer health. We specifically have had some great people from Western Kentucky Counseling and Raising Hope and several universities engaged in this. So the top topic is to address farmer physical and mental health through screening and programming at agriculture meetings, county level organizations, trade shows, and to include bilingual support. This isn't just a farmer problem, it's an employee problem as well, and it is an agribusiness problem. The stressors in agriculture are significant and they are not going away. And in fact, from what I've heard about planting season, I'm guessing your stress has increased dramatically in Kentucky in the last month. I hear it's not supposed to rain for the week, right? We're done. So in all seriousness, I would urge you to consider what you can do to help the stress of Kentucky's farmers. It is not a problem that is going to go away. This working group is creating some specific tactics to be able to bring this to awareness. No farmer that I have ever met wants to talk about mental health. And they probably, quite frankly, don't want to talk about their physical health either. But both need to happen, so that's really the challenge of the working group. And then the second one is one that's near to dear many people's hearts, and that's about food insecurity and understanding what programs are purchasing Kentucky products and building coordination to be able to purchase more products to impact more people living with food insecurity. One of the greatest discussions that I heard in these working groups was between a commodity organization who was unaware of some specific needs that one of the food insecurity organizations had. And so they were able to, as a side conversation, to get to know each other and then be able to work from that. So the next one is being able to look at the food system dialogue and understand how to foster dialogue around a bigger food system and how Kentucky agriculture contributes to working with partners. And that specifically gets into the public health space, working with dietitians as an example, nurses, medical doctors, and so forth to help them understand where food starts and where it continues to grow. And then finally, the next one is the food and health system research and being able to understand the inventory and best practices that are there. So that gets into a whole lot of details. We'll go quickly through the other ones. The next one is being able to, didn't we do value added? Okay. Is being able to look at value added. I apologize, my handout is in a different order than the slides are in. So the value added piece is something that a lot of people are interested in, building capacity. And so you can see there's very detailed sub-tactics. I'm not going to go through each of them, but it again gets back to producer education. Kentucky's farmers are very smart. They know how to do things, but there is a great deal of need for education around workforce and being able to build capacity. If you're not aware, it's not easy to go from milking 60 cows to all of a sudden no longer milking cows and having to grow a different crop. I speak from personal experience. So it takes a great deal of education to do that. And then finally, taking a look at what is happening already and being able to identify. The working groups are very committed to understanding what's in place so that we're, again, not repeating any work that's been done. And so part of that is researching value-added trends and opportunities. Okay. So our last two then, the next one is what we affectionately call agricultural literacy. I have not met a person who has been engaged in this plan who is not deeply passionate about helping more people around Kentucky understand farm and food. So if any of you have ideas around that, we certainly welcome that. But what they have done as far as the strategies, the first one is develop an Ag 101 presentation that can go out to businesses, restaurants, health professionals, healthcare students, community organizations, by members of the Agricultural Literacy Network, which is managed by the Kentucky Agriculture in the Classroom. The second one is the creating a video to be able to highlight Kentucky's agriculture contributions, how cool and beautiful and productive Kentucky agriculture is, to be showcased at places like airports, at the state fair, and so forth. And then being able to work alongside numerous educational organizations to develop teacher curriculum. And finally, again, understanding what agriculture literacy efforts are already in place to identify where the gaps are. The fifth one is working with elected officials and being able to make sure that we have relationships and represent agriculture as one voice. And then the last one is being able to look at teacher certification and some K through 6 efforts. Okay. Then the last one is growing collaboration and coordination and communication within Kentucky agriculture. And so part of that is information sharing. But yesterday, the working group discussion actually moved biosecurity issues and disaster protocol to the very top priority. If you're not aware of what's happening with a number of viruses and problems such as high-path avian influenza, and some of the recent activities around that, as well as obviously some of the significant disasters that you all have experienced in Kentucky. There's a great deal of interest amongst your agriculture organizations to be able to make sure that we have a protocol and a playbook and that everyone is working together. I've been really proud of the discussions that they have had around that. The next one is then information sharing. I think that probably speaks for itself. We all are aware that we're inundated with information, but perhaps we don't share it the way we should. The third one gets into agricultural literacy and more what we've already talked about. And then the fourth one, and this is one that I think you will see take a place immediately because it's going to start happening in the summer, is developing networking groups, just as I'm sure you all enjoy working with your colleagues, at least I hope you do, and that you learn from each other. Members of the Kentucky Agriculture Council are interested in establishing networking groups. So that is my very lengthy report on the tactics and the strategies that came from your fellow Kentuckians. So at this point, I think we will be glad, Chairman, to take any questions or any other direction that you would like to have.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. Appreciate your presentation. I'm amazed by the number of people that's been involved in this process and the number of hours that your group has put in to getting to this point. So we do have several representatives and senators who would like to have a question or a comment. We'll start with Representative King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for your presentation. I admire the detail and the roadmap going forward. It's going to be so helpful. May we go back to the first slide deck, please? I don't see a page number on it, but it's labeled Continued Diversification and Innovation. It's maybe halfway through your presentation. And we'll be going down to bullet point 4. How can Kentucky leverage its conservation practices in carbon market? Can you give me a little bit more detail about that? And then I would like to briefly explain one of the bills I had this session and how it could have helped in that. But exactly what is the carbon market and what are you talking about there?
So there is not specificity built around this tactic as of yet, so I would not want to speak incorrectly. But I can tell you that one of the goals, particularly from those that work in the more traditional commodity markets, is to take advantage of carbon markets that are coming in the future. Nationwide, there certainly are a lot of food processors, food service, and food retailers who have made claims around sustainability, and the goal is to be able to leverage Kentucky's existing conservation practices without incurring more costs to the producer to be able to take advantage of the carbon market. But there was no specificity.
I'll give you a thumbnail of what my bill that I filed this year would have done. It doesn't comment to the thumbs up or thumbs down about carbon sequestration or marketing. It simply stated that if a farmer, a landowner, entered into an agreement, that would need to be noted on the deed so any buyers in the future, creditors or heirs, would know that restriction was placed on the land before they got into managing it on their own. I was told by several experts it wasn't needed, that wasn't a need, but, and I'm not putting you on the spot, but if you don't have an answer to, do we need that or not, can someone, since you've gone to so much detail, can you look into that and let me know if Kentucky landowners need that designation on their deeds?
Sure, and Representative King, I know Dr. Shockley over at UK College of Agriculture has done a lot of work in the carbon market, so he may be the expert we point to for some more insight into this. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative All.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I echo some of my colleagues, Chairman King's remarks about appreciate your time, appreciate your presentation today and the work you're doing for all of Kentucky agriculture. As someone who grew up baling a lot of square bales and throwing a lot of hay, I too was excited for new inventions and technologies, and thank God we got an elevator when I was about 14 years old, and I'd have to throw those bales up into the loft all the time by myself. So I'm looking for new innovations like that. So my 93-year-old grandfather, who still farms every day and drives the truck, maybe can find something else to do, but I don't know. We'll see. I do want to talk about one of your goals here around the supply chain. I was joking with some of my colleagues behind me here. I did have a bill last session, House Bill 189, that I think would have played right into your goals here for number 1 and number 2. And just like my colleague had a thumbnail of her bill, my bill would have incentivized local school districts to buy locally sourced, either Kentucky Proud or locally grown agricultural products into the classroom, and would have incentivized it by matching the federal funds that were not covering the school meals at 100% if they can participate in the community eligibility program. And what I would like to know, one, have you seen any other states dive into this area to try to foster a relationship with the local school districts and the local farmers to strengthen, because I think what this does, it shortens the supply chain. It keeps the food local, it keeps the money local, it fosters the economy. So I'd like to learn if any other state has done anything like this, and if not, what do y'all think about that?
Well, I'd like to speak to that. So I'm not sure about what other states are doing. I'm sure there is something, but has been a wonderful group created here in Kentucky called the Farm to School Network, and it is educators, it's farm groups, it is the school food directors. They're providing training. They are connecting them with folks that can actually get the product into the schools. That group is meeting on a bi-monthly basis to continue this conversation, and then it will continue throughout work that comes out of the strategic plan. And I know Department of Agriculture is also looking at how we can address that as well. So work is ongoing, and I appreciate your bill.
Well, I would just encourage you to look at it, see how I can make it better. It was House Bill 189 from last session. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions, if it's okay. And thank you for your presentation today. Very, very thorough. A lot of information to digest there. I have a couple of questions, and one is regarding your work with the Chambers of Commerce. Very involved with my chamber. Of course, they're focused mainly like on bringing companies manufacturing, and they're buying up farmland like crazy, taking it out of production to put it into manufacturing buildings and things like that, that's great. But also at the same time, I have a very successful dairy that's diversified and now makes ice cream. It's become an attraction, and all around them is building up manufacturing and, actually housing and everything else like that. What kind of conversations are you having with the Chambers of Commerce to begin to focus as well on agriculture as they are on manufacturing and other business?
Great question, and that was discussed pretty substantially, not only from Chamber, but also local economic development boards. Farmers are not necessarily comfortable working with boards that they have not worked with historically. There is a great desire to do so, and there were a number of success stories from within the focus groups of farmers who have become a part of their chamber and have had quite substantial conversations as a part of that. So the discussions that we've had as part of the strategic roadmap really centered around having more farmers and agribusinesses engaged at the local level, and then also doing some things at the state level too to build familiarity. So nothing specific aside from working with leadership programs and encouraging more in agriculture to be a part of those boards. It's been very encouraging to see some of the success stories, and I think that as we have more in agriculture engage with boards like you described, then we'll have greater opportunities.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And certainly I know that's needed to have more collaboration, coordination with farmers and chambers. Lastly, I would ask about your workforce, where you're working on with youth and everything like that. Typically, unless you grow up in a farm family that already has land and equipment, it's very hard, if not impossible, for somebody that is interested in farming to get into it due to the cost of land and equipment. I have a son that farms, and he did not own it to start with, but now he's been very successful, and he owns 1,800 acres that he farms. But we've had this conversation. He said, Dad, today, he said, somebody like me starting out would not be able to get into farming. And so what kind of conversations have you had surrounding that? And is there anything out there that could help these young people that have an interest in that?
It's a concern nationwide. I mean, that's just the reality of our business today. This was discussed substantially amongst the first strategic plan or strategy that we talked about amongst farm transitions. Half of that centers around young people and getting more young people. So financing is a part of that. Workforce development is another part of that, because one of the challenges that we have is being able to help young people who perhaps have an interest in agriculture understand how they can get into the business. You are correct. If you're not born on a farm, it's nearly impossible. And sometimes even if you are born on a farm, it's still exceedingly difficult. So funding, policy changes, and doing some things with broadening awareness, both from the employee and the farmer side, have been discussed.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I would like to add to that, Senator Wilson. So we have a really wonderful success story. So Peterson Farms, that is headquartered in Marion County, they have done so much with developing an internship program and working with their local high schools, where they are inviting young people at the high school level to come and work on their farm. They have had an internship. They ended up hiring a young man right out of high school because he was ready to go to work for them. They have brought in college students. A great success of that has been that some of those employees that have worked for them they now have the funds to go purchase their own farms. They said they hated to lose them, but they are so thankful that they gave them the opportunity to be able to do that. So that could be a great path.
I would also add, Mr. Chairman, if I could, Senator Wilson, you all are very familiar with the PACE program and the Department of Ag and PDR development rights in the Lexington and Fayette County area. Although those have been very controversial, they have been successful too. And there are a lot of farmers, older farmers, that would like to preserve their farms for future farmers. And so that may be an area that we might want to look back into to fully or better fund those programs for those that want to take advantage of those. We've got to change our mindset from, farming is a business, and it can be a very successful business. And like Michelle said, that farmland is not undeveloped land. It is a business in and of itself. And so we've got to put agriculture, on the same status as a manufacturer. And I know Commissioner Schell and his team's doing a lot in changing that mindset, working on economic development as, agriculture is economic development. And it's important. And I'll also add, Mr. Chairman, it's crucial to our food security and our nation's security as well.
Thank you, Representative Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You just brought up food insecurity, and that was the point that I wanted to talk about that you all made, that one of the things that you're doing is working on food insecurity. And is that, excuse me, is that more on the we need to feed all Kentuckians? Is there also a component of that? I know that we have a lot of farmers who are struggling and not, they don't have these huge farms. And so I think a lot of people don't stop and think about the fact that farmers themselves can be food insecure. So what are the conversations that you're having about that? Is it two-sided or just one?
I think by nature of having agriculturalists involved, farmers living in food insecurity is a nationwide program. I mean, it's astounding when you look at the numbers. I think it's upwards of a third. Don't quote me on that. Yeah. But so it has been a part of the discussion. The primary discussions have been addressing food insecurity, particularly in urban areas, and being able to capitalize on some of Kentucky's unique products.
Yes.
I mean, you all are, if you're not aware, you're in quite a privileged state as far as the food you produce. I come from a state where they go corn and beans. A lot more than that. But the diversity that you have in Kentucky agriculture provides opportunity. Having said that, I will tell you that I think any agriculture leader in here will tell you that there are opportunities that you all could do to be able to help farmers, be able to be more profitable. It's a pretty tough market out there.
Yes, it is. And so thank you for the work that you're doing around that. I'm sure it's no surprise to you, but anybody in here who did not see the new Feeding America report that just came out that said that Kentucky is the 7th most food insecure state, and of the 25 most food insecure counties in the entire United States, we have 10. There was an effort this year during session to take SNAP benefits away from people. And this report shows us that we need to be feeding more people, not trying to take food away from people. I grew up on a farm that wasn't necessarily a working farm, but we farmed, we had animals, and we're big eaters. All the women are really good cooks, and feeding people is how we show love. And I think if we really want to love our fellow man here in the Commonwealth, we've got to find ways to reduce these numbers. They were alarming before, but this report shows that this is a 20% increase from last year. 20%. I've got the report right here in front of me, and I'll be happy to share it with anyone that wants to see it. There was a lot of news around that just a couple days ago. So thank you all for what you're doing to combat that, and I'm hoping that we can be better partners in that as well. Thank you.
Representative McPherson.
Yes, thank you. As most often, Chair King beat me to the punch here on carbon. No. She always follows. She leads and I follow. So, carbon credit. I've had a few colleagues or a few of my people call me and talk to me about carbon credits, especially with timber management. I think there's maybe at least a push or a thought process that we have so much timber in this area that companies will buy carbon credits of timber, and we were just asking for Chairman King's bill last year, talked about whether that need to be put in the deed or what. I'm a real estate appraiser, so when I was talking about people planning for and doing and for the next generation, very, very important. But anytime you take away a bundle of rights, a portion, property has a bundle of rights, and it's 100%. And anytime you take away one of those rights or sell it off or do something with it, then it has to be documented somewhere. Now, if it's going to go away in 10 or 15, 20 years, that looks more like a mortgage or something like that would be a document that would be put in when you run a title. Not so much, I'm just going to give my 2 cents in, that wouldn't be so much in the deed for perpetuity. Now, some things are. Some things where you put in for a lifetime would be in a deed, but some things would be just in a kind of like a mortgage or something where you would, when you run a title, it would show up that somebody has a right to that credits for a period of time. But again, timber management, I'll also say that vegetable production, my district, Allen County, is leading the state in vegetable production. Waste, changing number ones to number twos to making sure you can sell all of your product is so important today. Wood manufacturing, everything, they sell the sawdust, they sell everything. You have to make every portion of that profitable. Anything that you throw out and is not profitable is just a loss, and we have to find a way to make it up. So I appreciate all the things that you all are doing here and all the holistic look at the way you're looking at every part of agriculture. But again, the way we'll sustain ourselves is to become more diversified and to become more productive with putting fertilizer in the right place, not using more fertilizer than we need, don't fertilize land that's not as productive. There's all kinds of things that we're doing with innovation that's changing the way we're farming, and we need to continue that process. Thank you much for your time.
Senator Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a couple thoughts to throw out and discuss. Maybe, and since everybody else is talking about their bill, I'll talk about mine. Just saying. Agritourism is also part of agribusiness, and I filed and passed the Senate this last year the Working Animal Protection Act. A couple other states have done that, and what it does, it protects our working animals. And I think that's an important component of agribusiness and agritourism and utilization of animals. Every horse to me needs a job, and that kind of segues into my area of concern. Is that we're Kentucky's ahead in a lot of things, but we're behind in fighting propaganda from the Humane Society of the United States, PETA, and the anti-animal ownership and utilization people. Alternative meat and all of those things. And I think that, we're behind. And when the Humane Society's giving coloring books to kids in kindergarten, in our small way in Greenup County a few years ago, we did our own coloring book and kind of countered that a little bit. But, we've got to start there because they're well funded and they're starting there. So the attack on our way of life and our food sources will continue. And I think that's a topic that needs to be included in how to stand up and dispel the myths with facts and tell our story and not let them tell it for us. And that's just something, all these discussions are moot if they win. And that's just where we are in this. So that's some of my colleagues been here a while, hear me talking about that a lot, and I'm going to continue to, whether I'm here or not. And as a beef producer, I think, and I'm all about energy. I've got 2 degrees in energy. But the concern about solar and turbines usurping our farmland, it's hard to find hay, grain, silage, whatever the case may be. If you're in certain parts of Kentucky, you're having to haul it in from other states if you can find it at all. And that adds to the cost. It's going to put smaller producers out of business. So I think we need to also have a component on how to deal with, and balance and protect that farmland and educate farmers on, it's hard to turn down a lot of the money that's being out there and the impact and just data on impact of what it's doing to our hay land, our cropland, and working pastures for cattle and other meat sources. So I think those are 2 areas that we also need to discuss and have a component of in these discussions. And like I said, to me, the most important is to defend ourselves against the international movement that's going on for our sustainability and way of life and our profits. So I appreciate you listening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We got a couple more. Representative Pollack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your strategic roadmap presentation this morning is spot on. One of the specific topics I wanted to kind of just share with you is agricultural literacy. I serve on the board there in Taylor County, and I also serve Marion County, Peterson Farms, as was recognized a while ago. But there's a farm in Taylor County called the Home Place on Green River. It's over 200 acres. It's a nonprofit, and the whole purpose behind it is agricultural literacy. We have a couple of different events, but our main ultimate goal is to provide an agriculture outdoor classroom. We're targeting 3rd grade to 5th grade, exactly what you were sharing about a while ago. Where does their milk, bacon, hamburgers come from? And so we're kind of in the start of it all. We've had some local classrooms come, obviously just spending the day out on the farm and just really just getting out, breathing the fresh air, just being out on the farm, and again being experiencing the milking cow and the hog in the pen, and just a lot of those things, the chickens running around, all those type of things. And so I just wanted to kind of give a shout out this morning. Obviously, we're always open to great ideas, funding, and all these other things that can obviously provide that opportunity for, again, that targeted group to come out and just have a day on the farm there in Taylor County. So just wanted to kind of, like I said, give that shout out. Again, open to finding any ideas, any funding. I see Warren in the back. I know he's been there a time or two. And again, the Commissioner Shell and his team we're starting to work on some things on providing that opportunity for these young people to, again, just spend a day on the farm. So thank you.
Last one on our list is Representative Hale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the presentation this morning. Very, very, very informative. I'm not really sure how many people on this committee still farm. I know Senator Webb does. I do. I think Representative Cook does. I know Representative King does. And if I'm missing anybody else, I apologize. But you brought up some really good statistics there, and I'm going to get to what I think was the most important thing you mentioned in this whole presentation was the farmers that we are losing to suicide, the farmers that are struggling so much. We all can talk about farming, but the majority of farmers still losing money. I mean, they are. I sold beef this spring, the highest I've ever sold it ever, on the hoof, $3 plus a pound. But then when I had to go purchase fencing and gates and fertilizer and all that, I'm still going to lose money. And majority of us are all losing money. According to the USDA, and I'm using their statistics here, in 2023, farmers lost $42 billion. And they said that those numbers would be higher in 2024. $42 billion less profits in 2023, and it's going to be more in 2024. I'm just looking up. I just Googled it there on the USDA statistics. So people are, they're struggling, and 1.5% of people that are producing the food, the beef, the corn, and all of this, the other 98.5%, most of them don't have a clue, do they? They don't have a clue. And so our farmers are struggling, and I think when we look at even the current administration in Washington that has seemingly taken no incentives to help the agriculture industry. I mean, the price of fuel and the price of equipment and the price of all of this is just mounting up on people, and the pressures. And so many people are getting out of the business, but sadly, the rate of suicide among our farmers and agriculture people is incredibly high, and that's such a sad thing. And I don't have the answer to that. I really don't. I know Senator Wilson. I've actually talked to Senator Wilson about his son's farming practices, and we discussed that, even myself and him, before at a meeting we was at one time, and he's doing successful, and I know some other people are doing successful, but most of us aren't. I mean, we really aren't. And so, I mean, how much longer can we afford? I know diesel prices are down a little bit, but we were paying close to $5 a gallon for diesel not too long ago. I mean, I'm a small farmer. I just have a small practice, but how can I afford to buy $5 a gallon diesel fuel to put up 250 rolls of hay for the calves that I'm going to sell and still lose money on that? So I guess I really don't know if I have a question, but I mean, you went over a hour's worth of material here. You tell me what we're going to have to do to change this from your perspective.
From my perspective
Yes, ma'am.
specifically, agriculture's unique problem around mental health is that we lose our identity to what we do. And I can tell you this personally, my family farm in Michigan, my parents lost to bankruptcy. I was in my 20s, and I did not know what to do because I had always been told that our cows were the center of our universe. So that's just a glimpse of the mentality that surrounds farmers. I could cite example after example from other states about how farmers worried that they were going to lose their generational farm, and consequently they didn't think their life was worth living because they lose their identity and what they do. So nationally it is a problem. Specifically in Kentucky, clearly you can talk about profitability. You can also work with the agriculture organizations, Department of Agriculture, and I think that's what the strategic plan is trying to do, is to first highlight that it's a problem. Secondly, figure out how can we make this conversation palatable? Because no farmer is going, I mean, if I walked up to you, Representative Hale, and I say, how's your mental health? You'd walk away, probably, correct?
Probably not.
Oh, well, then you're unusual. I would walk away if somebody asked me that. Because of the independent nature of farmers and the fact that we often work in isolation, I mean, there's very real reasons why we have mental health concerns. So dealing with some of the stress management factors, clearly profitability is a part of that. I don't think any of us have the answer for that today. I feed dairy cattle.
Yeah.
I completely understand the lack of profitability. But the challenge that we have is what can we do to surround our people in Kentucky to help them understand that they're always more important than their business, always. And the working group has actually had some really in-depth discussions. We have an RN on that working group, and we have several people that are very concerned about this. I don't know if either of you.
Well, thank you, and Mr. Chairman, if I could just maybe make one more comment.
Sure.
I certainly love what I do, even here and on the farm, and I mean, I've done that all my life. That's all I've ever known was farming, raising crops and cattle and hogs and all of that. And again, there are years that you are somewhat more successful than others, but I think if we go back and we look at our profits over the last 15 or 20 years, I think all of us could say we've all lost a lot of money at that. But again, I like what I'm doing, and I like to provide food sources for people. And but again, thank you all for your presentation. I guess that was just my comments there today. But back to I think the most important thing is we do have farmers that are under such mental stress because of the borrowing of the money and then the prices going down and the fluctuation of all that. It's tough on us all. It really is. And I even see it in my community, a small community. But I do appreciate what you all brought to us today. You brought some really good stuff, and I thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. It has been a very good meeting. Before we started today, we thought we'd be out of here in 30 minutes. So, but the information you brought was very timely. This was a good meeting to do it. We didn't have anybody else on the program. We've got this room for 2 hours, so you guys did a great job, and I really appreciate what you're doing and what you've done here today. So we're going to wrap this meeting up. I'll draw the members' attention to item number 4 on our agenda. There's no action needed. Just bring your attention to those KAR statutes. And then I want to remind the members, look in your folder. There's an invite, this blue card, and this for the ones who don't have one that may be watching on TV. So please join us at the groundbreaking of the Agriculture Research Building, June 14th at 11 a.m., Plant and Soil Science Lawn, Farm Road, Lexington, Kentucky. So I want to draw that to your attention. Our next meeting will be July the 18th in this room at 9 a.m. And just for anyone listening, we have our programs lined up for July and August. September, October, and November have not been set. So if you guys have some ideas, some topics that you want to bring before this committee, whether it's members of the committee or members in the community, please feel free to reach out to myself or Senator Howe, Chairman Howe, or our staff. And if there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned.